probably heard of the term agile. But what does it really mean? The dictionary defines it as our ability to move quickly and easily. I like to define it as a set of guidelines to influence our mindsets and our ways of working. It is characterized by a strong human focus, an iterative and incremental approach, and swift response to changes. Now, while Agile is all about empowering people, it does not represent anarchy. It's a disciplined approach to work, whether it's software engineering, business, banking, retail, or what have you. But it's not an excuse for not having a process or having a sloppy process. As I said, it's a set of guidelines to help us get to a faster and better solution, but it's not a solution in itself. Agile is a spectrum, so that you may be more or less agile on that spectrum, but it's not a binary state of being where you're either agile or you're not. And finally, my favorite, agile is a journey of continuous improvement, so that you keep going on that journey, and it's not a one-time event. It all started with the Agile Manifesto in 2001, which laid down the 4 core values of Agile: people and interactions over processes and tools, customer collaboration over contract negotiation, working software over comprehensive documentation, and responding to change over following a plan. Now, I've been researching Agile in the industry for a very long time, but it wasn't until recently that I realized that it can be applied to a much wider context. And it all started here, in New Zealand. New Zealand is known the world over as a peaceful Middle Earth, tucked away in this tiny corner of the world. Sometimes frustratingly missing on world maps. Calling it an untouched piece of paradise would not be an exaggeration. As Kiwis, we are prepared for the rugby season, the cricket season, the tourist season, and the America's Cup. We are more or less prepared for the long Auckland commutes, and sometimes for second breakfasts. We're definitely prepared for fruit flies and other biohazards invading our environment. But we were not prepared for a terror attack. We were clearly not prepared when the late Haji Dawood Nabi welcomed the terrorist into his mosque with a hello, brother. Or when Wasim al-Sati thought that the man in the military dress is an official until he pointed a gun at his 4-year-old daughter. Or when Husna Ahmed died protecting women, children, and her own disabled husband. New Zealand was not prepared to lose 50 precious lives to an intricately thought through, yet completely senseless act of terror. When terror struck New Zealand on the 15th of March, New Zealanders were shook beyond belief. The world had woken up to yet another act of terror. Not the first, not the largest. And yet, there was something about this one that shook the world to its very core. It was as if the youngest, most protected baby of the world family had finally been dragged into long-standing family violence. We were all completely outraged and indeed very ashamed. As a Kiwi Indian Muslim, this kind of hit home in a way I was not prepared for. As the news started to come in and the extent of the damage became apparent, my initial shock changed into a lot of concern and questions. Questions like, who? Why? Were there going to be more attacks? Can my kids go to school on Monday? Will we ever be able to return to Friday prayers? And will I have to take my hijab off temporarily? These were questions that crossed my mind in the first couple of hours, but these were questions that I did not want to answer. Now, inquiry into what happened and how it could have been avoided is absolutely imperative, and it is underway. But today I'm going to focus on what New Zealand did to respond to all of these uncertainties and all of these questions. Speaking of uncertainties, it's always been a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. But as Kiwis, this was our first brush with the VUCA world. Now, we do know about this VUCA concept from business, for example, where businesses are highly susceptible to volatile markets, to uncertain technology and technological disruptions, to complex pathways to innovation, and to ambiguous customer demands. Both industry as well as research suggest that agile organizations are our best bet yet to a VUCA business world. And what do we know about this real world, this global world? We know that now, unlike ever, we have unprecedented access to volatile messages and violent weapons, to uncertain and unethical technology, to complex and fake news, and to ambiguous laws and protocols. So just as an agile organization is our answer or our best call yet to a VUCA business world, can an agile nation be the answer to a VUCA global world? My theory of becoming agile suggests that both the team of workers as well as the management needs to become agile in order for an organization itself to become agile and to benefit from it. If I extend my theory to the wider societal context, that would mean that the tribes or the people, as well as their leadership, both needs to become agile in order for us to achieve an agile nation and to benefit from it. So today I will share with you a journey. This is no ordinary journey. This is the journey of a country emerging as an exemplar agile nation. The actions of the New Zealand people not only restored faith in humanity for millions around the world, but it clearly manifested agile values and facets of what I call agile tribes, which is the equivalent of agile teams, but on a global level. And similarly, the actions of the New Zealand leadership manifested core agile values and values of agile leadership. So let's look at this journey and how it happened. First and foremost, the first of the agile values, which is people and interactions over processes and tools, turned into people and interactions over protocols and rules. Now, I've lived in New Zealand for nearly 15 years, and I have known its unparalleled beauty of both its people and its nature. But trust me, nothing had prepared me for the overwhelming love, aroha, support, and solidarity that was about to come our way. People came out of their homes and into streets to support each other. And they found solace in each other's company. Complete strangers, people they've never met before. And remember my concern about wearing the hijab? Well, guess what happened? Thousands of women chose to wear the hijab as a symbol of harmony. Now, I know that there are countries in the world that force women to wear the hijab, and there it can become a symbol of oppression. But in a free country like New Zealand, where women choose to wear the hijab, this was a really strong symbol of solidarity. And who can forget that iconic image of our Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, as she stood there with a headscarf, with equal parts pain and determination on her face. She echoed the sentiments of the nation when she said, "They are us. We are one." And in times where the international media thrives on sensationalism and divisive reporting, this was our media. This was our police. All aspects of society and leadership clearly embodying the agile value of people and interactions over protocols and rules. Next, we saw the second of the Agile values, which in the original manifesto is customer collaboration over contract negotiation, and that turned into community collaboration over closed decision-making. Again, both through the tribes as well as the leadership. The sentiments of the people were captured beautifully by New Zealand artists, such as this beautiful piece by Wellington artist Ruby Jones. "This is your home," it said, "and you should have been safe here." Murals were created to pay homage to those who were martyred. And as a leader of a country in the midst of a national crisis, somehow the Prime Minister found the time to go into schools and talk to children to help them make sense of things. Scores of vigils were organized and attended by thousands of people. These were all self-organized, either through word of mouth in the real world or through virtual means. The traditional Maori haka was performed across the country as a means to express grief and to share love and support. And that brings us to the third of the Agile values. Now, this value in the original manifesto refers to measuring progress. And in a software world, progress is measured through working software over comprehensive documentation. But in an agile nation and society, this progress idea was measured through policies and actions over speeches and promises. So it was that not only were the mosques being guarded by police outside, but everyday people came out into the streets and held hands and became human chains outside of mosques while their whānau prayed inside. And it was because of this that we were able to return to Friday prayers the very next Friday. Now, in a world where Islamophobia is being normalized rapidly, and where media likes to use fringe radicals to represent millions of communities that are totally peaceful, it can be quite challenging for a leader to stand up to global pressure. But when asked for what offer of support does New Zealand need, our agile leadership replied with sympathy and love for all Muslims. And that brings us to the final of the 4 agile values, which is responding to change over following a plan. But in this case, it became responding to change over following the status quo. At less than 5 million people, we're a relatively small country, but we were able to collect over $10 million for the victims and their families within days. And parliaments are known to be some of the slowest of systems. How can you possibly embed agility in slow-moving systems like the passing of bills and acts? It could have taken months, if not years or more, to do this. But New Zealand showed that it was possible to respond swiftly and with agility. And so it took just under a month for our New Zealand Parliament to introduce and pass the bill that amended the Arms Act of 1983, banning all semi-automatic firearms. So extended to a wider context, the original 4 agile values become Agile Nation or society values. And they look something like this: people and interactions over protocols and rules, community collaboration over closed decision-making, policies and actions over speeches and promises, and responding to change over following the status quo. And from this example, we can clearly see that Agile is not limited to software or businesses, but in fact, the Agile values can be applied to a much wider societal context. And we also see from New Zealand's example that where the tribes are responsibly autonomous, the leadership needs to be empowering and vice versa. And where the tribes are diverse and cross-functional, and this is literally any set of people in any country in the world, then the leadership needs to be human-centered and inclusive. And where the tribe is made up of people who are reflective with growth mindsets, the leadership needs to be collaborative. And both the tribes and the leadership need to be swift and responsive. So that was New Zealand's journey of becoming an exemplar Agile nation in the face of one of our darkest days. But we cannot rest here. Because as I said before, Agile is a spectrum. So while it's possible to go further, it's also possible to slip back. Therefore, we must be careful and we must continue on this journey. In fact, why just New Zealand? All countries around the world can embark on their own Agile journeys. And if they have already embarked on an Agile journey, they can make that go faster and better. So I'm going to take this idea a step further, this idea of Agile nations and societies that I've been able to share with you today. And I'm going to suggest that this is actually not limited to geographic, social, religious, or cultural boundaries. And just as our access to the internet and to the digital devices has made hundreds of digital nations around the world, similarly, by applying Agile practices on a personal as well as systemic level, we can become Agile nations and societies everywhere. And just like with New Zealand, when the tribes and the leadership both respond with swiftly and with a lot of conviction, we can see change. In fact, I'm confident that people around the world can self-organize around some of the biggest challenges facing our planet today. The big stuff, things like terrorism and hate crimes against all communities, and climate change, and poverty, and inequality. I'm going to leave you with this beautiful Maori proverb, which is a favorite of mine. What is the most important thing in the world? He tangata, he tangata, he tangata. It's the people, the people, the people. Thank you.